All right. It is the top of the hour. Shall we get started? Yeah? All right. Welcome to Star Trek. This is a wonderful conference. I have talked to some of you who have come here for the first time. So welcome. This is like my 15th. So it's been a ride. I'm Sam. Let's kind of get started. Hello to those of you in 1 and 2. This is a great time because we have just had a big lunch, and these are super comfy seats where you can put your feet up. Perfect for a nap. So it's my responsibility to keep you awake and entertained. With the camera streaming to the other room, I cannot walk around. Otherwise, I would dance a little bit to entertain you. There is a video. I'm an old man, by the way. So there's a video of me a couple of years back where there was a stage, and I was talking about something very passionate, walked straight off, and fell on my face off the stage. So yeah, I got ways to entertain you. All right, let's start. I'm Sam. I am a developer advocate at Progress Software. Hopefully you know us for some things we do to make developers a little bit more productive. That's all of our Telerik and Kenda UI and Fiddler and Sitefinity and a big portfolio of products. But I'm mostly a .NET person. I do just enough JavaScript to be dangerous, but let's talk about XAML. Let's talk about what the state is with modern desktop and mobile dev. We'll bring in some web as well. You know, we're a friendly bunch, right? So let's get started, okay? First up, everything we do with XAML today, which we'll talk about what it is, where it started, and how we got here, we're pretty much sitting on top of the .NET framework. And it's a good place to be. It's taken a while for .NET to get here. We started back with like .NET Framework early days, and then it became open source and modular and cross-platform. Today's .NET is very welcoming to everybody. The tools are great across Windows, Mac, and Linux. Rich ecosystems that you're coming into. There is lots of help to play around with. And you can reach a lot of different platforms with .NET, all the usual suspects. You kind of do see AI in the corner. It's not off in a corner. We have started from where the meme with the chef Bay doing AI sprinkling salt on things to like your steak is sitting on salt. Like that's all we can talk about. So if time permits, we'll look at a little bit of AI as well. So I do have pretty slides here. They are not important. I'll try to show you as many things as I can, coding-wise. So let's maybe do like 10 minutes of this, level set, and then we'll jump in. So that's modern .NET. XAML stands for Extensible Application Markup Language. This is nothing new, actually. The early beginnings of XAML were in like 2004-ish timeframe, where teams at Microsoft were playing around. The first time we saw XAML as developers was in this thing called WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, a way to build modern desktop apps at that time. And it was simple to start, and always came with the promise of solid tooling, lots of features, lots of extensibility. Essentially what you're trying to do with that markup language is define the visual tree of whatever app that you are building. So if you know XML, this is almost like XML. Like if you like XML, I'm going to assume that you love XAML. This, by the way, so XAML is known to be a little bit verbose these days. Older people like me are actually cool with it. Newer folks, not so much. But there are ways around it. But it does bring a lot of power. As a markup language, there are things where you can do data binding on, navigation, things like behaviors, effects, lots of different things that you can do with XAML. So it's a rich ecosystem. And over the last 20 years, XAML has grown a lot, and it has lots and lots of hits, lots of success stories. So let's recap and go down the memory lane a little bit. I did 2 years of this, so how about we don't talk about this, right? Yeah. Web developers were jumping at the opportunity of doing XAML in the web browser. That did not go very well. Oh, I did 3 years of this, so how about we also not talk about this, right? Frameworks, technologies, they come and go, right? This is still the reality. I'm not, counting this as, as a failure here. But, somewhere in the early 2010-ish timeframe, Microsoft said, let's, graduate WPF to UWP. It's going to be universal, runs everywhere, only within Windows. We don't care about iOS or Android. But now you can run XAML and power apps on Xbox and HoloLens. And the game developers were like, now, spare us. But it's, again, it ran its course and it was good. And again, based on who you talk to, this thing has been super dead or super alive for quite some time. But eventually, the focus came back to Windows and Windows apps. So WinUI is the latest UI and UX stack on Windows. If you want to write a modern Windows app, my good friend Jeremy is there. If you want to write a modern Windows app, that's what you choose. But the same tech can also help you build other platform apps. So my choice nowadays is to go with something that's a little bit more cross-platform. But WinUI has fluent design system, and it's good. It's the latest evolution of Windows stack. Then came Xamarin, early days of Mono Touch and Mono Android. We took .NET for the first time, took it outside of Windows, made it run on iOS or Android. Things were great. And as we speak today, May 1st, 2024 is when the Xamarin open source repo on GitHub got archived. So this thing is no more. Doesn't mean that the apps don't run or it's going, your PC is not going to catch on fire, but you're not going to get support. Especially if you're pushing apps to the app stores, there's going to be some time that you still can, but hopefully you're not sticking to this. And lots of customers are moving apps from Xamarin over to what's next. And this is not a sad story because the evolution of this is what the reality is, and that's pretty nice. Then we had this wonderful idea. So no one team at XAML. XAML is not a web standard like W3C. There is no governing body. So there was no one team that owned XAML and did its thing. Everybody took it and made it work for them, which meant that there were several dialects of XAML. Minor differences. To me, like you learn one, you can do everything else. But there was an attempt to standardize things, right? So the difference is like Xamarin would come in and say, oh, no, something is called a label, versus WPF will say, no, let's call it a text block, right? So there were annoying differences. So there was an attempt to standardize things. And the only thing we learned from this experiment was GitHub issues is not your emotional support system, because this got nasty. People started name calling, no, our XAML wins versus their XAML wins, and so on. So that didn't go anywhere. Then we have had some tooling along the way. There was this wonderful thing called Visual Studio Blend, but then they said, no, let's make it Blend for Visual Studio, because naming is hard. And this is actually really nice, because the things that the things that make XAML a little verbose, this can help. So things like animations in your UI, things like extra properties on complex pieces of UI, you can do all of that. Brushes and selection tools, this is pretty nice. So can we do this for modern apps like Xamarin or .NET MAUI? They're like, no, this is only for desktop. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I suppose not. But this is still out there if you're building desktop apps. So at this point, you're like, dude, why are they still talking about this? What's left? There's a lot left. And also, old men don't learn new tricks, right? So I'm going to stick to this as long as I can. But the reality is, almost everything that we talk about on a XAML scale today, all of the frameworks and platforms are open source. So there is no barrier to entry. And it actually does take you quite a few places. So let's take a look. Since we started with WPF, XAML-wise, don't let anyone tell you that WPF is dead. It's fine. In fact, WinForms, which started like 6 years before WPF, that's fine too, because you can run that on the latest .NET runtimes, which is nice. So it's not legacy. It's running your business. You don't have to build like Battlefield Gray type old school apps. You can build some very modern apps with WPF. They can have touch. You can put it on a kiosk. Life is good. Very rich ecosystem. Good stuff all around. If you are old, like me, this is liberating. If you are new, you're like, why do I have so much of choice, right? Because it's like 20 plus years of evolution of desktop development. Here are all your options, most of your options, if you are building Windows desktop apps. The top 4, again, are native Windows, but you can also do other things. If you're doing a web stuff, like anything JavaScript related, you can bring that all in. We got Electron, we got PWA, lots of ways to bring that web goodness in. The last two are actually enabled by the automatic, evolution of Xamarin, which is .NET MAUI. So we'll bring in some Blazor, we'll bring in some Angular, React. Everything is welcome. It's a welcoming place to be. For all three of you who run Linux as your desktop, more power to you. You can still reach Linux. Was there a question in the chat room? Okay, just a chuckle. Old people get some of the jokes. So yes, you can do native apps for Mac and Linux as well. But a lot of the XAML stack will take you to Mac and Linux as well. We'll talk about some of the variants where people have taken XAML, not just Microsoft, but Uno Platform and Avalonia, who have done wonderful things with XAML. So lots of options. Let's talk about mobile. Desktop is kind of the ballpark of where things are with XAML, but why not bring in mobile as well? So how do you build for mobile? It doesn't always need to be an app. Here's my 1-minute spiel on all the ways you can broadly that you can build for mobile today. Right? If you want to do straight up native apps, iOS, Android, Windows, and by Windows I don't mean Windows Phone. Everything else Windows. You can write native apps, but it's just expensive because 3 very different stacks, 3 different code bases towards running a simple app. So hopefully you're looking at cross-platform solutions these days. If you're doing anything web, feel free to bring it. Lots of apps in the app stores, both Windows and Mac, are essentially web apps, and they won't run just fine on desktop. Mobile web, make it a good citizen on mobile phones. PWA, Progressive Web Apps, makes it a very good citizen. So now you can run my web app, and you can pin it to your home screen. I can send you push notifications. You can do offline sync. So lots of good things. Service workers in the background. If you're doing JavaScript, you can actually write native cross-platform apps with things like NativeScript or React Native. The last line here, the cross-compile solution, that's kind of taking higher-level languages like C# and Rust and F#. Again, for all 2 of you writing F#, you can do that. Very comfortably compile things down into intermediate languages and then run it on iOS, Android, and other places. So lots of choices in there. So that's where kind of Flutter is, although it's Dart. It is essentially in that same ballpark, at least to me. This is where things got interesting in the XAML world, early 2014, 2013-ish timeframe, because we started doing what was called Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android at that point of time. So the idea was we're going to write some shared logic, but the heads are going to be written separately. And you can write that in whatever platform language that you need, C# or Java or Objective-C or Swift. This was a good first step. And a lot of folks think like this is done and gone. It's not actually. This is actually called .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. It's still as part of the .NET. Then we started doing Xamarin.Forms, which was an abstraction, because I, as a .NET developer, should not have to learn a whole lot about iOS or Android. Can I not just write an abstraction? Yes, I can. It's just fundamentally hard, because these are 3 very different stacks. So that shared UI stack, that can be written exactly or entirely in XAML or entirely in C#. So choose your poison. But it helps to know a little bit of that purple, the green, and the blue. So if you need it, you can step down into native land and do stuff. And this had a good run. Like I said, it's literally ended like 2 days back from now. But again, it's still, your apps are going to be fine if it's already in the App Store. Hopefully, you're looking at moving them forward. This had a good run, and a very mature XAML platform took us to iOS or Android. Life was good, except when you started shipping complex apps to the app stores or to enterprises, your code base got a little bit unwieldy to maintain. So there were some pain points, and let's listen to those pain points and try to do better. Which is where this one comes in. It's called .NET MAUI, multi-platform app UI. The P is silent because MPAUI sounds like you're punching somebody. That would not be nice. So MAUI has some good benefits going for it. iOS and Android, that's kind of given. We know that from Xamarin Land. Let's add on desktop back. So even though WPF and WinUI are doing their thing, why not reach desktop from MAUI? So thankfully, we did not reinvent the wheel. We already had WinUI for Windows, so that's what we are turning around and rendering and reaching Windows. Apple has a similar problem where everybody wants to write for iOS because that's what the money is. That's what it's shiny. Nobody writes to write apps for the Mac desktop. So they want your iPad apps to run on Mac, and that bridge is called Mac Catalyst between AppKit and UIKit. That's the same bridge MAUI is using to get you on a Mac. So lots of good things. True single project nowadays. Everything is shared as much as we can. Even like Uno platform came out recently to say everything is shared and it's true single code base. It's not like one solution with 7 different projects for each platform. It's truly single. Lots of rethought out architecture. Everything is good. We are welcoming web technologies, so things have gone well. XAML as an ecosystem has also grown in the 20 plus years that it's been around, and there's some good stuff around. This is Uno platform. So remember the different dialects of XAML? What .NET MAUI is essentially is Xamarin.Forms XAML. If you, for some reason, don't like that, then you can use WinUI XAML, which is exactly what Uno platform is. They have their renderers, they turn around, and they can reach a lot of different platforms, more than MAUI. They can reach Linux, they can reach WebAssembly, so choose whatever you feel comfortable with. And every ecosystem is productive, tooling is great, and they also done some really good things where they have like a Figma plugin where you can work with the designer, and they can import those styles and layouts in your app. So a lot of good things happening. If you are still wanting to do WPF style XAML, then Avalonia might be your thing. Again, they wrote up their own stack on top of that, and that goes just about every platform that you can think of, including WebAssembly and iOS, Android, and Tizen. Most XAML things will run on your fridge because your TV or your fridge is running Tizen. Good stuff all around. If you have WPF apps, in fact, they did something where you can make it an XPF app, so it starts running on Mac and Linux as well. They did some magic to lift and shift the underlying stack, so now it runs cross-platform. So lots of options. If you have investments in XAML, this is where enterprises should feel good, because your WPF apps will keep on working forever, and the rich ecosystem means you can take that same code, reuse it elsewhere. MVVM is a design pattern, model, view, view model. You don't have to do it, but the more complex your code base gets, this really helps out in having separation of concern and testability. So your views are hopefully lightweight, and the view model is the one that does the orchestration. Models are essentially data objects that you can connect up to Entity Framework or SQL Server under your table, whatever you need, or go to the cloud. There's a lot of help. A lot of the XAML platforms nowadays have this stuff built right in. So data binding, routing, navigation, tools, extra properties, visual state managers, all of that is built right in. But if you need more, and if you find yourself writing boilerplate code, there are lots of MVVM frameworks that help you out. Again, you pay a little bit of price up front to understand how things move, but for a bigger team, things like Prism, I know all of the guys who maintain these things, it's all great. MVVM Lite has kind of essentially evolved into its own thing. Which we'll talk about. I think it's the next slide. You could also do MVU, Model View Update, which is more friendly if you're coming from like a web background. A little bit of a simpler loop, and you can still do this. There were some experiments. MVUX is also a pattern. So again, choose your design pattern. Hopefully, you're not having to rediscover things. This is actually slightly older. It's more than 8 right now. But we had this thing called the Windows Community Toolkit, which became essentially the .NET Toolkit. So a lot of the MVVM stuff is like built right inside. And you can drop this on any .NET app, pretty much, and benefit from MVVM and some UI. So a lot of good things happening. If you're doing .NET MAUI, then there's also, these are all open source, community toolkits. Things like behaviors, like where you have a little bit of code that you can attach to just about every visual element. Things like essentials or extensions, animations, different types of layouts, converters, like if you want to render a string as a date or, things like that. All of that is done for you. So you're coming into a nice, rich ecosystem. All right, 19 minutes in. Let's wrap up in the next couple. Web. We've got to talk about web because that's the reality for lots of enterprise apps. How do you build apps? ASP.NET, if you're a .NET developer. This has also had a checkered journey, and it's really nice, at a really nice place right now. Everything is modular. It is super, super fast compared to like Node.js if you're just using it as an API to spit data back. Open source, no barrier to entry, really nice. But it mostly started from a server side, server first mindset. Modern SPA applications are written with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you wanted to write a modern web app in the last 15 years, you went with any of the SPA frameworks, and that's how you rolled. Those are also welcome in some of the XAML stacks. Until Blazor comes along, 2016, 2017 timeframe, and kind of changes the game to say, yeah, let's do C# front and back. So you don't need to write JavaScript if you don't want to. You can ship .NET DLLs to the browser and have at it. And it has a few modes of working. It can be server-side with a SignalR real-time bridge that maintains the shadow DOM, or it can be completely client-side with something called WebAssembly, which is web standard. So you can compile higher-level languages into almost assembly-like code that your browser can execute. So performance is really good. So that opens up the playing field. You can do C# front and back. And Blazor doesn't need to be only for web apps. It can actually be, you can put it PWA. It's meant for that. There's a checkbox you can check, and your Blazor app becomes a PWA. Electron, you can put Blazor inside of Electron and run it on desktop. Hopefully not on mobile, because that's a little bit too heavy-handed. But MAUI comes along and says, oh, we actually do welcome Blazor with open arms, because it's the same runtime. MAUI and Blazor have the same runtime. That's .NET 6, 7, 8, 9. Every November, we get a new .NET. So that does change the game quite a bit. More stuff on PWAs. You can always do PWA with any web stack. Electron, this ships with Node.js, and that's the bootstrapper, and then Chromium as the engine. So it's a little heavy-handed if you don't know what you're doing, but otherwise, lots of success stories like VS Code, Slack, Figma. Those are all Electron apps, and they run all day just fine. But .NET MAUI takes a different approach. That means that you, as the user on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Tizen, you most likely already have a browser. So why ship with a browser? And we already have .NET as a runtime. So the Blazor hybrid story is essentially taking Blazor UI, running it locally. There is no server, there is no WebAssembly. It's just purely running on the metal, on the device. So performance is really good, and that's the MAUI or the Blazor hybrid angle. Marketing slides from Microsoft, maybe you have seen this, but they want to say you can have reach with web apps, or you can have depth with native apps, or you can be somewhere in the middle if you wanted to do the hybrid approach. And you can actually share quite a bit of code between web apps and native apps. I'll try to show you if I can. So a lot of good stories all around. More of the architectural of how that's done, essentially a Razor class library. So one UI maintains itself for both web apps and native desktop and mobile apps. So good things here. And then we are also welcoming Angular and React and Vue. There is not much tooling right now, but there's also nothing stopping you from doing this. They're building on the templates and other things for .NET 9. So hopefully you see that Blazor and .NET MAUI are kind of the pillars of innovation with modern .NET. Yes, you can do other things like AI and Aspire type, orchestration glue, but in terms of stacks for app building, these two are getting the most innovation, and hopefully they can help you move from right or from left to the right. And you can modernize things, you can reuse most of it, bring your investments forward, and it'll all start working. And so XAML is what powers .NET MAUI natively. But again, if you don't like to do XAML, you don't have to. Don't let XAML scare you away from a stack, because you can do all of that with C# or Blazor if you wanted to. So adopt the frameworks, and then you can mix and match whatever visual tree you want. There's a lot of help, though. I am obviously biased because I work for this, but there is UI for WPF, for WinUI, for UWP, for Xamarin, .NET MAUI. Hopefully, you are not reinventing the wheel, and it's not just us. There are lots of people making UI that competition keeps us on our toes. So get the UI help that your apps need. All right, I'm going to stop here. Any questions so far before we jump into code? Any questions? Everyone awake? All right. Let's look at stuff and see what modern .NET, modern XAML can do for us. All right, so first up, I'm going to show you a bunch of different things. If you, I'm not trying to confuse you, just trying to show you as many things as I can in like 40 minutes. So if you wanted to get started and you have not played around, do a search on Maui or Blazor on these pages, and that's where you're going to end up. If you want to learn more about XAML, like pick a stack, WPF or Maui or Xamarin.Forms, if you're still doing that, there's a lot of documentation on XAML, like how do layouts work, how do the fundamentals work, what's the visual state manager, how do I change properties. There's a lot of help. And how are things compiled to make it faster? There is just a lot of help. So pick a stack and just read up, and you'll see what it is. It's not hard. It's just a little verbose, but it's not hard to pick up, and there's tooling that kind of helps you out. All right, let's jump in. I'm going to be on a Mac. I will show you Windows as well. I do run it as a VM, so wintertime, I don't need to run heat in my home. The VMs are good enough to keep me warm. But I do have like a Windows box under my desk. But let's stay on VS Code, and I will show you Windows in a bit as well. OK, where shall we start? I have lots and lots of things to show. Let's start with just Maui hello, and we'll go from there. So just to kind of show you, has anyone played around with .NET MAUI, used it? OK, some hands. So then maybe, let's dive into something a little bit more realistic. So let's go somewhere here. I'm going to show you an app that's modern. I'm not trying to show you the UI, just an example sample app. So let's start here. And just to kind of show you the power of modern XAML. This is what XAML looks like. And this is what might be scaring some people to say, oh, this is too much code. What is all this? What are all these properties? What's with the indentation? This is long. This is not even human readable anymore. Like, don't break my heart. This is fine. It's just code, and you can follow along. You can get some help. Right? A Copilot knows XAML inside and out, because there's a lot of open source libraries on Xamarin and Maui. So ask Copilot. It's going to write the XAML for you. Right? How about that? So this is a .NET MAUI app. I'm going to run this really quick just to show you what is possible with modern XAML, because the frameworks kind of position it nicely, and you have some nice knobs and buttons to switch things around. So first up, it's going to start with an iOS, because that's what I chose right down here. This is VS Code. I'm using the C# dev kit with the Maui extension on it. So this is a iOS app, a native app. So it went and talked to Xcode, came back with an app package. The UI that you see is all written in XAML. So this is the classic mobile view. You have a list of things. Everything is a list of things, right? So you may or may not want to invest in crypto these days, but that's up to you. This is all fake data. I'm not reading the stock market here. So let's go into Bitcoin. And notice the experience here. I went to another page, and you get to see some fancy charts and graphs, but I'm trying to showcase a different thing here. This one has some historical things. I can do like candlestick. You get the idea. And then I come back, and I'm back on the main page, right? So classic mobile experience, all native, all done with XAML, right? How about we change things up? Let's go here. We are going to now change this up to run on something a little bigger. Let's go with the Mac. And let's run this again. So same app, just runs on iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows without changing much code. So that is really nice. All of this is driven by target frameworks, so you can switch around where you want to run your app. It's building, it's optimizing assemblies, packaging everything up. It's coming. OK, so now I get a desktop app. Exactly the same app, .NET MAUI, now running on desktop, and I get the same experience on Windows as well. But notice the difference in experience. Just because you can doesn't mean you should have the same experience on mobile versus desktop. Two very different animals, touch versus mouse and keyboard, right? So your experience should reflect that. But you'll notice that it looks familiar, because I am not reusing or rewriting this app. I already have these views. I'm just putting them together, because I have a bigger surface area. So here I can tap on something else, and it loads that corresponding thing. Same exact view, just split up, and now it's together on desktop versus Mac or mobile. So the way we do this is actually super simple, and this is kind of a trick that we have been doing for a long time. So essentially, I have these views, which are a combination of things that I'm going to use. Yeah, question in the chat room? Not chat room. Yes. So the question was, how is it changing the responsiveness? This isn't magic. It's not Bootstrap that does work as seamlessly. You can actually get down to a very granular level where you can listen to window size changing events. And you can, especially on iPads, things get more complicated because now you can do multitasking. Your window really can be, different things. So you can listen to those events and respond, but this one's kind of basic. So I have these views, and then I have this app XAML.cs, which is where, let's bump this fonts up a little bit. This is where, my app starts up, and essentially I'm just saying, if you happen to be on iOS or Android, this is kind of rudimentary, go start with this page. If you happen to be on Mac or Windows, which is larger form factors, why don't you go to that desktop view, essentially? So if you look at the desktop view, where is that? Up here. So essentially, this is the desktop view, but it's actually using that same view. This is the collection view. So I'm essentially in the desktop view. I'm just putting two things side by side. But this is kind of the very base way of doing it. Hopefully, if you are caring that much about window sizes, then you can listen to the events and have that responsiveness. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to something else. All right. So let's take a look at where MAUI started out. We'll start here. All right, this is a Hello World MAUI app. You get the same exact project templates. This, by the way, if I pull up my CLI here, everything is running on the latest .NET. So if I do a .NET version, it's going to tell me I'm running on 8. If I do a .NET, I think list my SDKs, maybe that list SDKs. No SDKs. There you go. So .NET has come a long way. It's not a system-wide installation. It's in a folder. You can blow it away as many times as you want. You can package it with your apps. It's very flexible. I've had some .NET 9 previews that I've taken off, so you can see 6 to 8. It's all here. And then if I do a .NET new, show me a list of all the things. These are my templates. These are the exact same templates that power your file new experiences, both in VS Code and on Visual Studio on Windows. Same exact templates that spit up your code to get you started. So this is the Hello World MAUI experience, and straight out of the gate, you'll notice that this is all XAML, but things have come a long way. For one, everything is all included in one solution. This, by the way, is Solution Explorer. This kind of makes it look like Visual Studio, so it knows your CS Proj and other files a little better. I don't mind this look. By the way, in terms of extensions, these are my extensions. I highly recommend this one here, the material icon theme. It just knows every one of your files, and then colors them the right way. We have some extensions. Oh, and then GitHub Copilot. It's so beautiful. It's so magical if you can just pay up a little bit for now, but everything is AI. And it's really nice. There are times when I'm like, how did you know that? And you can just say, whack explain, like, how did you recommend that code? Because it knows, dependence injection, XAML, all very well. This is a .NET MAUI Hello World project. So notice that you have a single solution, and all of these are folders, iOS, Android, Windows, Mac. Right? So anything specific to those platforms needs to go in there. But hopefully you're doing as many things cross-platform. Some of the things like permissions and info plist and entitlements, those need to live on those respective platforms. But when you do a build, essentially that CS Proj has a list of target frameworks. When you are deving in your inner loop, hopefully you're turning the things that you don't need. You don't need to do a build for every framework every single time. So that's the way to speed things up. But then over here, there's some nice stuff here. This is some shared stuff. These are my resources. App icons, splash screens, styles, images, they're all shared, which is really nice. There's a thing called image resizizer that's built inside of MAUI. So if you give it an SVG, it tries, it's not perfect, but it tries its level best to give you the right sizes for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. So that's all good stuff. What else? So this is kind of a .NET MAUI app. Like I said, things start up here. This is the main view. This is the XAML that you get. Again, if you don't want to do this, you can write all of this UI in C#, right? So you get quite a bit of flexibility. However, let's talk about some other things here. What else can you do? I'm going to close this and do something that is really not nice, or That's not how God intended, is what I'm going to say. But we're talking about flexibility, right? This one here. Let's say you are stuck with a old project, you're doing XAML, and your cool friends, the other teams in your company, they are doing fancy web apps, and maybe you have a designer, maybe you have a design system, and you're like, I'm having to reinvent all of this UI and restyle it myself. Can I not share and borrow what you're doing? So yes, you can. So normally, XAML kind of works with what's called XAML styles. So they're, in the default project, you get some colors. I mean, these are your default native colors. You get some primary, secondary, tertiary colors, and quite a bit of brushes. These are the styles for 24 plus controls that are kind of rendered in there. You can change it if you want. But let's say your cool friend says, I want to do CSS. And yes, you can style XAML with CSS. It's just nobody does it, but you can. So what I'm doing here is this is the main page.xaml. I am bringing in that as a CSS. That's my reference. And then it's a vertical stack layout. I got an image. I got a label. So what you can see in my CSS is just the common things like my classes. Like this is a named button. That's a named class. What I'm saying here with the label is every label inside that vertical stack layout should have this style, right? So it is pretty flexible. So let's go run this really quick. Let's go back here. It's going to look very hideous, but just to get the point. Yeah, fine, run it on my Mac. So there you go. Hello world, MAUI app, but all of the styles are with CSS, right? So yes, it can work. If you want to bring in less, hopefully not less, but Sass, you still can. You just need to have that pre-processing in. So once MAUI, like maybe your CI/CD pipeline does it. So once MAUI gets it, it is flat CSS, and then you can render. There are certain things that do not work, and they are all very well documented. There are actually certain things that are MAUI specific with CSS, like something to do with the shell, how the hamburger menu or the tabs work at the bottom. You can do all of that. So, if you have a web team, you can borrow their styles because, XAML lets you do that. Any questions so far? Any questions? All right, let's keep going. 1:36, so I got 24 minutes more. We can look at a whole bunch of stuff in 24 minutes. Let's, not the editor, close that folder. All right. Now, let's talk about desktop a little bit. This one here. So remember, if you're doing XAML and if you're doing Windows desktop apps, then you can do WPF, you can do Win UI. But those only work on Windows. If you are truly wanting to have that Mac desktop, then MAUI is your bet because now it truly runs everywhere. However, you got to understand that WinForms and WPF and Win UI have a lot more history than MAUI. They are much, much richer ecosystems. MAUI is kind of catching up. It's been like 4 years now. So already there are things that are built in for Mac desktop or Windows. Let's go around this and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's hard to recreate everything that WPF had over 20 years in like 4 years, but they're trying. I have been speaking about MAUI for quite some time, and if you ask me like 2-3 years back, like if I were to start a greenfield desktop app today, what would you do? You got some choices, but nowadays my answer would be MAUI, because I have big insurance companies, banks, even some government sectors doing native desktop development with MAUI. So this has definitely gotten some, some things going for it. So this is a desktop app, but you'll notice sometimes it doesn't work over the projectors, maybe. I'm trying to show you like a hover effect, and it's not registering it as much. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you see that? Yeah, that's like a hover that we can do. Or we could right-click and do this context menu anywhere on any visual element or any pixel of our app. Like we can do that. You will notice that I have a little hamburger menu here. That is coming from the shell, and it can be smart. So you could say that, do shells or do hamburger on desktop, but then the same app, you can do tabs at the bottom or at the top if it's running on mobile. Then you'll also notice that up here are the regular, this app is called MAUI Desktop. These are the regular menu items, but that location thing, That's mine. So you can do menu bar items and integrate nicely with Windows and Mac. It also does, keyboard shortcuts. So I can do Command A to launch that thing. So that's nice. And the other thing that any enterprise desktop app needs is this thing, multi-window support. It has to have it, right? And Uno platform has it as well. Avalonia has it as well. I can, keep tapping, and each one is a new instance of that same window. This is not very useful. You will want to have a different instance, but you get the idea, right? So all of this desktop stuff, working with, notice if I close this, the app is still running right up here, right? So I have to go in here and then quit like that. So it is ready for desktop. All of this that I'm showing you, it's all XAML. So this is, let's go into the main page here. This is the menu bar with the flyout items that I showed you. One nice thing, accessibility is kind of built right in. So I can get like semantic properties on just about every visual element. I can do a flyout, that's the context menu that I showed you. And what else? And the multi-window support, that's just, app, new up a new window, and that's about it, right? So quite a bit of help for desktop apps, and it's built right in. Make sense? Yep? All right. Let's switch gears. We're all about switching gears, right? So as many things as we can see. Let's see, what else? Let's look at DI for a second, because this is also built right in. This was heavily contested because and everybody understands the benefit of dependency injection, because essentially this MAUI program.cs, this is unlike what Xamarin had. This is using the .NET generic build pipeline, which is exactly what .NET console apps and Blazor apps, everybody uses this, so it's a standard. When you run these apps on mobile devices in particular, you do pay a little bit of a price up front because it has to register your dependencies and figure stuff out, bring things into memory as you're using it. But that's a small price to pay for the benefits here. So when you're doing DI, it's baked right in. I can bring in my dependencies right here. These are my pages, my view models. Everything is built right in. Not everything needs to be singleton because that's kind of our default, like one instance of it throughout the app. Or you can do transient, which means like, give me a new instance every time I ask for it, or it can be scoped, right? So 3 different ways of doing DI. So you get the idea here. Let's go run this on a Mac. Find .NET MAUI debugging. Syncing. Okay. This text came from dependency injection, which is nice. And when I click on this button, it goes to the other page, and it's doing a random color. So you get the idea, right? I'm asking for a new instance, but this first page, like the click count hunters, are just one instance. So DI is built right inside of .NET MAUI and most XAML stacks, which is nice. All right, let's move on to more things. Let's talk about Blazor here a little bit. I got 1:42, so 28 minutes. Let's talk about Blazor here a little bit. Now we are blending in web stuff with our XAML. What can we do with that? So let's take a look here. I'm going to go back into here and choose Blazor with hello. So in my .NET templates, this one here gives you a native .NET MAUI app, like MAUI, with C# and XAML. This one here brings in Blazor. So if you're doing web stuff, you can now blend that in with .NET MAUI. So this is the project that you get. And right out of the box, you'll notice some differences. This one here starts up the same way, but the CS proj has the project type of SDK Razor, so it understands what a Razor view is, right? Otherwise, it's about the same. But then, in my MAUI program.cs, I get this new thing called a Blazor web view. Let's bring that in. This is a smart abstraction. What it's trying to do is saying, what platform are you running on? If you're on Android, I'm going to give you a Chromium web view. A web view is essentially the web browser without the shell, without the Chromium. If you're running on Mac, then let's get you the WK web view. On Safari, you get WebKit. On Windows, you get Edge. That's the idea. And then you get this thing called, where are my pages? That's weird. It's missing the pages thing here. But you get a www root. Platform. Oh, components is what it's called. I was looking for pages. Now it's called components. So these are some Blazor layouts, and these are actually some routes. And then if I go into the pages here, this is index.razor is where it starts. This is Blazor, right? This is meant squarely for your web browser, but we're just dumping them inside .NET MAUI and making it work. So let's go run this on, yeah, Mac is fine. I will show you some iOS, but Mac is the quickest to do a build on. Let's go run that. So now, essentially what we're doing is running a .NET MAUI app. It is absolutely a native app, but the UI is going to be Blazor. That's all Blazor. If you do Blazor, this is hello world, right? Which is weird. Like in 4 years, the Blazor template hasn't changed. Same exact thing as in your browser, the fake weather service, it's all there. Now, just to prove, this is a MAUI desktop app. How about we pull up Safari here? What is the one thing that web developers cannot live without? DevTools, right? You want that. Now, I'm within Apple's walled garden, so nice things happen to me, right? So take a look at this. That's my machine, and there is my Blazor Hello app. And that is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that you can muck with all day and play around. If I open this up, it's somewhere in here. Sidebar, maybe, where is it? Main, eventually, there is my weather data, right? So it's all HTML, and it's just pulling up whatever browser that you need. So native app, but running inside of Mac or Windows or iOS or Android, but with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And performance is really good because it's all local, which, speaking of performance, let's look at what this can pull off. So this one, by the way, like for those of you who do not like me because I'm old and you hate XAML, this is all the XAML that you ever have to write, right? So don't let XAML scare you off, right? You're just putting it in a content view, and then this is the Blazor web view. So we are essentially saying, take a Blazor app, here's your www root, here's your index.html, have at it. Beyond that, everything, navigation, everything is a Blazor component. So you're bringing in Blazor stuff and running it inside. You can actually mix and match. Since you already have some XAML view, if you want some native UI, you can mix and match. It can coexist with your web view. There's also nothing stopping you from putting a dozen of these web views on a single page. Guess what's going to happen? Performance is going to stutter, because now you're going to spin up 12 Chrome processes instead of one, right? So just, be aware. Some more questions here as we are looking at this. It's good that Blazor can run, but can Blazor do everything that mobile or desktop apps need? And of course it does, otherwise I wouldn't be saying it, right? Where is it? MAUI native Blazor. All right, let's launch this. We want to actually run this on something that's a little bit native. So let's choose this. iPad Pro, that's fine, have at it. So we'll run this. So native MAUI with Blazor app. Again, only XAML that you need is to spin up that web view and then forget about it. So this is going to take a little bit because it's a cold start. Not as bad as Android though. I'm a bigger fan of iOS, as you can tell already. 13 minutes left. Okay, we can do this. Come on. Simulator. Oh, there it is. Okay. Same exact Blazor UI now running inside of an iPad or an Android tablet. You get the idea. But this one is all Blazor. So if I tap on this button, these are some very native things. It's telling, here's your app name. You happen to be running on portrait on this mode. You happen to have Wi-Fi. So anything that MAUI can do, it has probably about 40 or so APIs, which are abstractions. Coming from the Xamarin world, we used to have this thing called Xamarin Essentials, because you don't want to write Java or Objective-C, you want to write C#. So these are platform abstractions that give you integrations into the device APIs. Now that has become MAUI Essentials, and it's so essential that it's not there anymore. So it's kind of baked in, so you don't have to worry about it. It all works. Then if I go into the counter component here, crash because I changed the runtime. All right, hold on. You're seeing this real here, all right? We're going to blow this away. Yeah. Fixing things on the go. All right, delete. This is a golden tip here, because I have struggled. So when you're doing most things with XAML C# code bases, you want to make this a habit. You want to come into bin and obj and blow those things away almost every build, because otherwise you're holding on to older artifacts. So that's gone, right? Now we can do a fresh build, and yeah, it might think for a minute, but we'll get through that. Any questions while the build is coming up? Okay. Yeah, Avalonia Uno. Okay, 11 minutes left. Yes, I will try to show at least one. Yeah. But let's finish up the web thing really quick, and then I'll show you some more desktop things. Okay, so the app is now back. Counter component, I can read write to storage. That's reading like writing a timestamp. Write to storage, that's like now. And then I can go back, read that from storage, and it gives me the same timestamp. Take a picture. Use your camera, or go into the media library, and I pick a picture, and it shows up here. That's a Blazor component, and that is actually an HTML image tag that's showing me that thing. And then if I go into fetch data, this is the classic fake weather, but I'm already on a device, so I can actually read geolocation. This is the iOS thing about permissions. Don't say you're going to stalk the user, obviously. But you get the idea, right? And when I say allow once, I can read the actual lat long of the user. So all of this is doable because, sure, now you can crash. I don't care about you anymore, but you get the idea. So all of this is XAML. And all of this is Blazor, actually. Here's the image, so you can blend in HTML with XAML here. This thing that's running in @code is the code behind, essentially. I come from like classic ASP spaghetti days, so I'm hurt. Please don't do that. Make it a code or counter.razor.cs, so you can move that off to a different file, because testing markup and code should not coexist too closely together. I can do preferences, I can read write, I can do secure storage, like more native APIs, but this requires keychain on iOS, so it needs more entitlements, but you get the idea. And I can, yeah, fine, go away. Media picker, that's how easy it is. Then with some permissions, like that's my info plist on iOS, that's how I can read geolocation, and that is just one line of code. Fetch data, that's just geolocation, one line of code, and it's so easy, right? So this is nice. So most things I can do with Blazor as well. I can do with MAUI and Blazor. All right, 9 minutes left. Since Jeremy asked, I have got to impress, right? Let's find the newest Uno project, which is this one here. We're just going to fire this up. I have not changed anything about this. But notice how Uno platform also gives you the same things. Now it is also a true single project. So everything else is a folder. And if I go ahead and run this on a Mac, notice the target frameworks here. Let's see. No, give me a terminal here, because if I run it on a Mac, it sometimes gets confused. Oh, actually, I might need to just copy it over so it's quicker. Here's my $1 million cheat sheet, which I'm not sharing. No, it's all, I'm old, I forget my stuff. So here's my .NET build, and we're just going to do a build on Mac Catalyst. So I can do a specific build. I don't have to do a build for every platform every single time. So come down here, do a build for Mac Catalyst. Notice that Mac Catalyst is right up here as a target framework. I can also run this on WASM. So if I go ahead and run this now, it's going to do a build. Similar idea, very similar idea to MAUI, but you should get a desktop project on a Mac with Uno platform. And again, all of the benefits of their UI. You can actually use some MAUI UI inside of Uno. All of the things like Telerik UI, Syncfusion, DevExpress, anything that you want to use, it's all rich ecosystem. So that's a desktop app. Bring in Figma toolkits, so a lot of good things happening. Now, let's, 7 minutes left. As one does, I'm going to pull up a VM, right? Windows 11. It's fast. It's an M2 chip. It's super fast. Right, let's do this. Okay, on my Windows box, let's pull up Visual Studio. For those of you who are doing WPF or WinForms, all of this looks very fancy, but you're like, I have to rewrite my app in in .NET MAUI. I don't want to because I have ROI to think about. You don't have to. You don't have to rewrite everything because some of the benefits can still be had without going to MAUI. Especially the Blazor stuff is what I'm showing. This is a way to maybe modernize your apps. Now that I'm on WPF, you kind of know that I'm on Windows. I don't need Mac or other things, so I don't need to write this in .NET MAUI. So if I go into this project, the only thing I'm bringing in is this WebView core as a NuGet package with just that one thing. This is a WPF app. I'm essentially just pointing to a URL. So kind of a dirty hack, maybe the lowest hanging fruit. If you already have line of business websites, you can load them up just fine inside of a WPF app, right? So all of the web stuff lights up and you can do that. But this is not very nice, right? Because you're just literally pointing to a web app. What's a little bit more realistic is building Blazor inside of WPF, which is this one here. So here, I am referring to that as a Blazor web view, although I can still call it a edge web view. But notice here, I have www.root, I have CSS, I have index, and I have a counter.razor. And that is a Blazor component that just happens to be local, right? So if I go ahead and fire this up, if I did not tell you, you would not know that that little thing within a WPF app, that's a Blazor component. So mix and match. You don't, XAML doesn't mean that you have to do always XAML. And I can do this on WinForms as well, so really nice. Also, another thing to point out, let's see, 5 minutes left. All right, our folks here to tackle me away. I'm going to use all of those 5 minutes, man. Almost, all right, all right. Another thing to kind of look at, I'm going to just run this, just to kind of show you. Because we are welcoming web stuff into XAML platforms, I can bring web UI. This is all of our, this is really small, yeah, there you go. This is all of our Blazor UI that has no business anywhere outside of a web browser, but I can do that on a desktop app because I have the web view, so I can render all Blazor UI. And notice how this one here is like a date time picker. Since I'm on WPF, it knows Windows, or I mean keyboard and mouse, that's my calendar picker, but some of the controls can actually be smart. So now you have Bootstrap, because now you're in Blazor land. So if I shrink this all the way down, almost to like a mobile form factor, if I tap on that now you get full screen, because it knows, oh, now you need touch, right? So all of this can be mixed and matched really nicely. Okay, 4 minutes left. Let's do one last thing, and then we'll stop. As you can tell, I can go on and on, but we have a fixed amount of time. All right, let's do one more. Oh, I missed out showing some other properties which have been really nice, but I might be able to show you that really quickly. So let's go in here. Let's close this. And since we talked about Blazor, it's unfair to not talk about the other stuff, right? So Angular interop, the name kind of gives it away. I'm just going to run this so you know what's going on here. Give me a project to run. Main page demo, sure, iPad Pro is fine. All right, let's go run this. How many of you do Angular? Anyone in the room? Or React? Yeah, that's all welcome. Oh, I did not realize Matt was sitting right down here. That's my good friend Matt, does a lot of different things. He's really smart. But here is my Angular app, ng-new Angular app running inside of an iPad. And you'll notice that I'm reading screen dimensions. So again, .NET APIs, I can tap on that button and it says, hey, you're running on an iPad Pro with portrait. So JavaScript can call into .NET and .NET can call into JavaScript. The debug experience is not as fluid, but it works, right? So what we're doing here is we have a completely compiled Angular app that we're just dropping inside of a MAUI project. And then all you have to do is, where is that? This one here. All you have to do is mark your .NET methods with JS invocable, because you get that interop. So now you can invoke things just as easily. One last thing that I'm going to show, 2 minutes left, right, is this idea that, oh, this is way too small, that you can coexist nicely with web and native worlds. So here's a solution where I have a few projects. these three are web projects. Blazor for the web as it's intended, could be WebAssembly, could be web server, but then I'm also adding a .NET MAUI project, which is for native apps. And you'll notice that this one here does not have any pages or components. Neither does my web app here, which is, let's look at the client side, it doesn't. That's because all of that is in this project, which is essentially a Razor class library. So I can reuse that same code and UI across different things. So I could just, for the sake of time, we're just going to run this on a Mac really quick. Start. Do not tell anyone that I pulled up Visual Studio for Mac, because this is also dying. VS Code is fine for what we're doing here. So notice that this is a Mac desktop application, and now I can read the window dimensions. I have my same Blazor UI, and this same UI, I can change some UI in one place. It shows up on the web app as well as on the native app, right? So truly shared UI across platforms. Right? So I have, rambled through a lot of different things. Hopefully you get the idea that we have a lot of ammunition at our disposal. So what's stopping us from going and changing the world? Let's reuse as much of our code as well as our investments as possible. Modern XAML is very mature. The tooling is great, goes to a lot of different platforms. Everything is open source, no barrier to entry. So what's not to like? Don't let a little bit of verbosity and this stigma of old people like XAML stop you from exploring all of that XAML has to offer. So I'm going to stop here right at time. Thank you so very much for spending an hour with me. Hopefully this was somewhat beneficial and fun. You can find me online at most of these places. But thank you. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. All right? Thank you.